Hello, I'm Steph from My Driver Classic, and today we're back in the sunshine at the Standard Motor Club Rally 2024. And they've said to me, Steph, go and pick a few cars to take out. And I had to go for this Standard Vanguard Phase 2. It's an incredibly rare car, and I know that you all really loved the Phase 1 last year, so it seemed madness not to pick this as one of the cars that we featured on the channel. So in today's video, I'm going to show you around the car, talk to you about a few things that went on, tell you why this car was first for offering something that has changed motoring even today, and then we're going to take her out for a test drive. It's a really beautiful car. It's had a lot of love and time and money spent on it, and I cannot wait to share it with you. So come on, let's crack on and have a look.
The Vanguard came to market with the Phase 1, which was sold with the strapline made for Britain and designed for the world. And as we explained in the Phase 1 video, it really was a car which went worldwide, partially due to the quality and reliability, and partially because what was then the British Empire allowed for selling favourably into markets across the world with relative ease. However, there might have been advantages to market entry, but the car deserved the success it received, and on the back of the success of the Phase 1, Standard came to market with the Phase 2, which is what we're driving here today. Now, the car was made from 1953 to 1955, and in those few short years, around 81,000 cars were sold worldwide, and those sales were probably helped somewhat by the easing of the steel shortages and the UK home market wait times for new vehicle purchasing, which, as we discussed in the first video in Phase 1, we said that people were having to wait for sometimes years for their car, but by this point, that wait starts to get an awful lot shorter. So those that had lusted after a Phase 1 had a much higher chance of getting a Phase 2. Now, the Phase 1 benefited from a facelift in 1952, and that was badged as the Phase 1A. So the Phase 2, as we're testing today, saw the front end not really receive too many changes. You might see a few tweaks, but the real styling updates on this, style-wise, are to be found to the rear of the vehicle. The new back end of the car meant that the boot space now offered 50% more room, which you'll see in today's video the owner has utilised for all his camping and rally supplies. You can see it's a very practical space indeed. You'll probably also note, if you watched the Phase 1 video, that the back window on this car is much bigger, which really does improve the driving experience visibility wise. The styling of this back end is referred to as the Ponton 3-box notchback styling. However, the styling isn't the biggest scoop on this Phase 2. It's actually an addition which was made to the range in 1954, and that addition is the diesel engine option. Now, this made the Phase 2 the first British car to be offered with a diesel option. And so that was made possible by the Ferguson tractor side of the business, because as you know, Standard also had the Ferguson tractor under its umbrella. And what they did was Standard took the 20C Ferguson engine and they removed the limiter, and then they fitted it into the Standard Vanguard Phase 2 to give the Standard buyers something new. It is also worth mentioning that you'll probably know that engine is a lot heavier than the petrol engine that we're testing today, and with that they do make changes to the chassis. They stiffen everything up and they allow it to carry an engine which is far heavier. Now, if you're wondering how that pans out performance-wise, the diesel variant got a top speed of around 66.2 miles per hour against 80 odd for the petrol variant, and the 0 to 50 for the diesel cars was around 10 seconds slower. However, the MPG was noticeably different and offers the uptick, and the reason that you might invest in it, because the diesel offers around 37.5 miles per imperial gallon against 23.5 miles per imperial gallon for the petrol cars. The petrol engine, the 2088cc engine, which is sometimes just referred to as the 2 litre, was the same as the Phase 1, so we've talked all about it in that video. It was an entirely known unit, and it had also been used in the TE20 tractors and other standards of the era. It's a very popular engine within the Standard lineup. And in fact, it's worth mentioning that this engine was so hardy, it even won Standard the 1955 Red X 10,500-mile round Australia test, and at the time it was the world's longest and toughest car trial, so it was a really big accolade for the engine, and it's worth mentioning as we talk about it here today, even though it wasn't necessarily something that was in place when this car came to market. Now, if you're wondering what happens next, the car's then replaced by the standard Vanguard Phase 3. Now, today, these standards are still fondly thought of by many who remember them, and they're very well represented at today's rally, as you probably saw in my standard rally video. However, for a car manufacturer which was once respected and known worldwide, it seems a shame that the name was phased out in the first instance and today is not commonplace in the classic car world. We really need to see more standards. Now I'm going to jump into the car and show you it in a little more detail.
Now coming inside here, you're probably looking at this dash and thinking, that is a lot more laid out than that standard companion that we took out last week. And this is the thing, sometimes people have one brief interaction with standard, like a standard 8 or a standard 10, and they think that everything is very Spartan. But once you come up through the range to something like this, it all starts getting a little bit more luxe. So what have we got? Well, first of all, we've got this glove box, which has bamboozled me more than once today. And I thought it was meant to open this way, and it actually opens up like that, which for me, it's quite hard to get your hand in there, but look, it's a very small complaint indeed. So you've got your lockable glove box over here. Coming into the centre here, we've got this beautiful medium and long wave radio. And I don't think it's the original, but it isn't far off the edge of the vehicle. It looks probably more like a 60s model. And it's in this beautiful Bakelite surround. Coming down from there, you've got your side and headlights. You've got your panel roof light, and so by that it means that light that's just at the back, just there. You've got your starter, and then coming over here, you've got your wipers. You've got what's ambitiously called the aircon, but is essentially fresh air coming into the car, and then you've got your choke there as well. Coming down from there, you've just got an ashtray. And then in front of you, you've got a very simple set of gauges. Now what I really like about cars of this era, and I'm sure many of you agree because I see it in the comments section, is that this simplicity is just beautiful, and it really allows you to connect with the road and the world outside you. So let me show you what we've got down here. Well, first of all, you've got your temperature gauge, you've got your oil pressure gauge, you've got your speedo and your trip clock, you've got your amp meter, and then you've got your fuel gauge over here. And that is everything you need. But when you consider the age of the vehicle, there's quite a lot to be had, because you look at vehicles that even come out in the 70s and they don't have as much as we've got in front of us here. Steering wheel is exactly as you would expect. You've got your indicators in the middle, just here. And then you've got these two stalks. Now you might be wondering what these two stalks are doing. Well, first of all, this one is our column gear change, and we have demonstrated column gear change before. We looked at it in cars like the Zephyr. I believe we had it in the Phase 1 Vanguard, and we've had it in a few other things as well. But I'll show you that as we go out driving here today. Remember, it still follows that H pattern like you would have if you had your gear stick on the floor, and it's very easy once you get into it. A lot of people look at stuff like this and get very intimidated, but I'm here to tell you today that once you get going with it and you just forget your concerns or the anxiousness around changing that gears, it's really not that difficult at all. And then over on the right hand side, we have something that I wasn't expecting to see, well, until I saw the overdrive badge on the back anyway. We have the optional overdrive fitted on this, so I'm going to try and show you that as we go out driving today. Now that is pretty much everything in a nutshell. Remember, as I was telling you earlier, you've got that 2088cc engine under the bonnet. This is the petrol variant. Again, I was talking to you about the petrol and the diesel, and so with this we're expecting top speeds, but definitely not going to try and achieve it today, of 80 miles per hour, and we're looking to get 0 to 60, and I think it's around that 20-21 second mark. But what does she sound like? Well, check we're in neutral, and when you do it, when you check you're in neutral in column change, you have to be like this. It doesn't feel like it's in a gear, so I'm going to start it up for you. Now with this starter, by the way, sometimes you look at these, so like on a Morris Minor it's a pull start, on this it's a push. We do have to give her a bit of gas as we go. She's got a wee bit of choke on there. Now, as you can probably hear, it sounds really nice. It's not as agricultural as you might get in some of the other 50s stuff. But what I'll do is I'll let you have a little listen from the outside, and then I'll take you on a test drive. You can probably see there that gear change is just so smooth, and it's the first time I've done it whilst the car's in motion. So I wanted to share that with you so that you could see just how straightforward it is to be using these column change cars. And a lot of people get very worked up and they say, oh, I could never do it. You could. Now we're taking this road very gently because it is a single track coming out of the hotel, and I always get quite worried that people are just going to whip around the corners. In fact, let's see if we can use this overdrive. Oh yeah, that feels nice. Have a listen, I'll take it off and you can hear it go back into it again. That's really nice. It's a good stepping stone actually. Here we go. Now it's funny, there are some cars that you get into and you instantly feel at home and you think, I could drive that and I'm not going to be too anxious on this test that I'm constantly thinking about how to drive. And this is certainly one of them. This is a car that's really been built with the end user in mind. Now we are going to be careful today because we're running on trafficators, and I am always somewhat cautious that people don't use their eyes at the best of times. Sorry, I left the overdrive on there. So let's flip it back up again. So that's us into the third gear there, so that's your top gear. And once we get to the top of this hill, I'm going to pop the overdrive on so you can hear what it sounds like. And there we go, the overdrive's on. Take it off just to climb again. Now it's funny because a lot of people always talk about 50s cars and they throw out sweeping statements like, oh, that can't keep up with modern traffic, that's too slow, oh, it's old. Now I'm cruising along in this and I'm really having to hold her back because she's got so much more to give than I would like her to, because I don't want to be setting off any speed cameras as we go along on this drive today. The handling is, as you can probably see, there's a little bit of play in the steering. But look at the age of the vehicle, you would expect some of that. That's not an entire surprise. But the one thing I will say is that the steering is so much lighter than you're probably expecting it to be. And we're going to pop back down into that second gear. There we go. I know that sometimes I'm probably a little bit too cautious with these things. Now I will say as well that back in the day when I first started doing reviews, I always used to be quite intimidated by bigger vehicles like this, or vehicles that certainly felt a lot bigger than what I was used to. And the one thing I will say for this is that whilst it is a very big vehicle, and it can feel almost intimidating when you look at it and you think, oh, that's going to be a right handful. It's not at all. Now, you saw me go round that roundabout, and I wanted to take you round quite a tight, small roundabout to show you that whilst the turning circle isn't as small as a City Super Mini, it's certainly not as big as some of the other things that we've taken out that aren't quite as big as this. It's a very manageable vehicle, and I think partially as well that's helped by the fact that you have such cracking visibility. You can see right to the end of the bonnet. You've got these giant windows all around you, and there's so much space around you as well. So it just feels like a really spacious, confident driving position to get you going in. And so it just means that you can just enjoy the drive, and you're not having to sit there thinking, oh, I'm going to have to do this, or I've got to think about that. It feels like a quality car even now, decades after it came to market. But what would I change? Well, I don't know. There's a couple of little things that I would like that are personal preference. Give them away. So the things that I would change, preference-wise, is I would really like a parcel shelf. I think that they're really handy to pop your maps on and everything. And even though you've got these sumptuous door pockets to store all your bits and pieces, there's nothing quite like a parcel shelf to keep everything on. But in terms of your driving experience, there's really not much that I would add or take away. Bench seats are always marvellous because you can fit an extra person in the front. The column gear change is easy enough to get your head around, and that overdrive really does bring something to the table. You can see it there, look, really does bring something to the table and just adds something to that gear change. It makes the gearbox feel a lot less. Sometimes you get in cars and you think, oh, I really wish there was an extra gear, or wish there was a little bit more there, whereas with this you don't feel like that at all. I just really appreciate cars like this so much, and I know that a lot of you do at home as well. Now I know that a lot of people probably would have really liked me to have taken this out and ragged it, put it through her paces, but I really don't think you need to show off a car like this. They're most comfortable on these country roads, but the great thing is that if you do need to take it on the motorway, it's got it in it to do so, and that for me makes it a truly practical classic that you can use and enjoy and take with you wherever you might be going. Now I am back at the beautiful Norton Park Hotel, which means that it's time for me to hand back the keys to Bob and say thank you very much for letting us take out his beautiful standard Vanguard Phase 2. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and now the last time I did a Vanguard video, a lot of you told me about owning them yourselves or childhood memories sitting on the back seat. So if you've got any, leave them in the comments section below. But until next time, take care and drive safely.